Hi everyone, I'm Shashi Reddy Kuda. Today I'm going to present my Star Paper Defense IA697 course on evaluation of email spam detection techniques, and my committee members are Professor Abdullah Busan, he is my chairperson, Dr. Lincoln and Professor Snehakalya. Contents. Coming to my contents, methodology, and part of methodology are tools and techniques, data presentation, and next data analysis, introduction of data analysis itself, and study questions or hypothesis, recommendations, conclusion, future work, and references. Methodology, tools and techniques. There are numerous existing email spam detection techniques. All these techniques are categorized into different sections. They are challenge response CR systems, checksum based, rule based, content based, DNS based blacklist, machine learning based systems, cost based, reputation based, and origin based. There are also few more tools and techniques, protocol based, social network based, OCR techniques, fingerprint based, heuristics, hybrid filtering, honeypots, torpedoes, traffic analysis, reverse DNS checks, contact forms, ham passwords, and aggressive spam filtering, and many other techniques as well. So, coming to data presentation, these detection techniques can be classified into four sections. First, necessary actions needed by end user techniques, in which these are mandatory steps that should be followed by the email users. Automated techniques by email administrators. These are the techniques that are operated by the email administrators. Automated techniques by email senders. These steps should be followed by email senders, and law enforcement officials and researchers. So, where legal measures needed to be taken by law enforcement officials. Next, data analysis. So, process of filtering spam email. Email message has two sections. So, one is the header and the other is the body. The data regarding the content of an email message is displayed in the header section. So, the header contains sender address, receiver address, subject field, and timestamp. The user can view the path of an email message through this header section. So the body is an essential part of an email message and is not predetermined. So it might include like web pages, text, HTML or videos, images, along like analog data as well, digital data, files, and so many audio files as well. So like continuation of this filtering process. So there are like few mandatory steps that needed to be monitored when the data of an email message is validated. Like for example, there are pre-processing, tokenization, and feature selection. So pre-processing is nothing but once an incoming email message is received, this is the primary step that will be computed and all comprises of tokenizations. So tokenizations in the body section of an email message, this pulls out the words or phrases and modifies the message in a meaningful way. And feature selection. So the feature selection step is next to the pre-processing step. Necessary actions needed by end user techniques. So avoiding responding to spam is the first thing. Once you respond to spam, the spammers consider responses as a legitimate email address. If you consider an email message as spam, do not open it. So try not to open any links and attachments associated with it. If you receive malicious content from a known user, then communicate with the sender of that email and let them know. So most of the spam emails contain website links where the recipient is instructed to follow, which are more dangerous. Next, munging an email address. In general, email addresses are advertised on websites or chat rooms are unprotected and also vulnerable, so which could lead to email address scrapping. The act of concealing an email address in order to stop it from being accumulated automatically by the spammers is address munging. So this address munging can block the computer software from spotting the original addresses. So, but a user can still read it to regenerate the real address. Next, ham passwords. So some of the service use ham passwords, and request the unknown senders to add a password in their email that describes the email message as a ham email message. In general, ham passwords are inserted in the subject line of the message, and these ham passwords and email addresses are presented on the websites. Next, discretion. Sharing and forwarding the email address within the bounded group of individuals is the simplest way of reducing the possibility that the addresses will be picked out by the spammers. Likewise, instead of using CC field, the email addresses can be placed in BCC field when sharing and forwarding an email message to a group of recipients who don't have any connection with each other. So by using BCC field, the recipients cannot see the other recipients' email addresses in that group. Next, disabling HTML in email. In recent years, most of the email systems are integrated with the software application functionalities like HTML, which displays images and URLs. So if an individual or correspondent tries to read a spam email message, then staying away from or disabling HTML will help to reduce spam, but it is not a solution for completely avoiding spam. So some of the images found in the spam email messages may be offensive. They can be traced by the bugs or on websites and can be picked out by JavaScript depending upon the vulnerabilities of the securities in the HTML providers. So next, disposal email addresses. In a few situations, like without the assurance of the website holders that they are not using addresses for composing the spam emails, an email user needs to provide an email address to the websites. Like with these criteria, to lower the chances of risk, it is better to give a disposable email address that the user can disable after forwarding emails to an original account. Next, contact forms. In situations, businesses and few correspondents avoid posting their email addresses and instead request for contact through the contact form on the website. So this information is forwarded through email again. This way of contacting is troublesome for users as they do not use their email client and email deliveries are not notified. So these contact forms cannot work without a relevant technology website, which is a disadvantage. And reporting spam, this is one of the main things. So reporting spam by tracing down the spammers' credentials can block their services and emails and is also reported as a criminal offense. So though it is difficult, spammers can still be traced by the online tools available, but these tools are not accurately performed to trace, but to some extent they can at least prevent us from this spam emails. So once you report spam, the spammers switch their functioning to different URLs and IP addresses. So reporting spam with this approach has not played a huge part in diminishing the spam. Next, automated techniques by email administrators. So CR systems, which is challenge response systems. In order to deliver the email messages to the recipients by the unknown senders, there are numerous tests to be cleared. These procedures are used by the email providers and many other internet service providers in order to reduce spam. So this technique is titled as challenge response system. And next, authentication. So many software applications have evolved in order to recognize the email as authorized for the domain name holders. So to list the authorized sites for sending an email, a domain name system is used by most of the software applications. So also many other email authentication protocols such as like sender policy framework, domain keys identified mail, and domain based message authentication reporting and conformances are broadly used like with the many of the developing technologies. So with these software systems, it would be difficult for the spammers to spoof the email addresses, which is the simplest way to generate spam. So these systems cannot stop spam completely, but at least can make it harder for phishing and email frauds. So next, collaborative filters. So this is a community-based filtering technique where the content is filtered based on the inputs collected from the end email users, like this is globally, like we as end users. So here the users can indicate the incoming email message as spam or ham. So ham is generally a legitimate email. So once the user marks the incoming email message, it will be reported to the database. If a specific email message is flagged as spam by certain users, then this filtering technique blocks that email message before it reaches other community inboxes. So the disadvantage of this collaborative content filtering technique is that any spammer can pretend to be a genuine email user of that community system, where they can falsely mark the spam email message as legitimate email message. Next, URL filtering. So many phishing or spam email messages have URLs included in it, so where the victims are attracted to open them by clicking. And this is the most known technique from the early 2000s. So URL filtering technique extract URLs from the email messages and search them in the spam house, like tracing email spammers. So and also in domain block list, which is a database, and also uniform resource identifier black hole list. Also spam URL real-time block list databases as well. Next is checksum based filtering. So these filters make use of information in the form of receiving bulk email messages that contain some unique differences. Also, checksum based filtering filters detect and diminish the differences between the email messages. So the leftover difference that reside in the checksum are searched in that checksum database. The checksums of messages, like which are considered spam by the email recipients, are accumulated in the database as well, so such as distributed checksum clearinghouse. So in order to avoid detecting spam with this technique, spammers usually include an identical hidden bug like hash busters, so in all the email messages they send to the recipients, so which contains identical checksums. Next, DNS based filtering. So commercial and free DNS based blacklists are available in huge numbers. So this technique grants the mail servers the ability to verify the IP address of the incoming email messages. If the IP address is listed, then the email messages will be blocked. So here administrators can select from the results of the DNS based blacklist, and real-time black hole list as well. So where there are various policies such as websites that avoid spam, open mail relays, which is like proxies, and internet service providers who encourage spam. Next, country-based filtering. So few countries block their email communication from specific countries that send spam in large volume. So through their email servers, they can do this. By using a country-based filtering technique, the emails can be blocked from the specified countries based on the sender's IP addresses. So there is a chance of blocking some genuine emails since it is filtered based on the origin of the country. Next, rule-based filtering. So rule-based filtering, also known as content-based filtering technique. This operates by using the specific list of words or by using the phrases that are not accepted in the email messages. So if any website encounters any spam advertising phrases, so then the email directors or providers include those phrases in the filtering techniques. So the header filtering technique considers the header of an email message that holds the data regarding the origin, whereas content and destination of the message as well. But whereas spammers conceal their information by spoofing the fields in the header section and then frame the email message to appear more legitimately here. Next, PTR reverse or DNS. PTR reverse DNS checks. So PTR is known as pointer. So pointer record is one of the domain name system record. In reverse DNS, this pointer DNS records can be useful for numerous things, such as email messages having common reverse DNS names will be refused to accept by most of the MTS. So MTA is mail transfer agents. So the forward confirmed reverse DNS validation is used by many email servers, and the legitimate domain names are placed in the received for in the received header field. So an authentication can be built by the FC or DNS validations between the relationships of the holder and the domain name and the holder of the network who has provided the IP address as well. So these are the vulnerabilities by relying more on the DNS systems. Next, hybrid filtering. So most of the email providers use spam assassin or policy debate and many other different tests for scanning and detecting spam email messages. They allocate a numerical grade for each of the tests. Once an email message is tested with with this criterion, the grades are computed, and if the grade is exceeding a given value, then the email message is indicated as spam and will be rejected. So with this technique, false positives are less likely to take place, as no spam test can individually indicate the email message as a spam. Next, SMTP callback verification. As most part of the spam is generated from the forged and the incorrect sender email addresses, spam can also be detected by verifying and considering the sender email addresses as legitimate. So by connecting SMTP to the mail exchanger, the sender address can be validated by the email MTS, email mail transfer agents. So callback verification technique has disadvantage, as most of the spam is generated from a forced sender addresses. So all callback verifications are performed to the faultless email services which are not related to the spam. Next, statistical content filtering. So here, this is also known as Bayesian spam filtering, can operate with no administrative continuity. This technique satisfies the end user's requirements, where the end users can tag the email address, email messages as spam or like genuine. So, and the filtering method masters from these marked tags. The filtering software reacts to the changes immediately if the end users tag the email message. So this technique verifies the header, transport system, and along the content of the email message. Next, spam trapping. An email address is seeded where the common users cannot find it, but the spammers can find it. So once the email address is composed, then the sender should be a spammer and will be blacklisted. So for instance, an email address example@xyz.com is positioned in the HTML source of a site where it is not shown on the page. So common users cannot view it, but the spammers can find it, as they use the scrapers to collect the email addresses from the source HTML. So once the spammers uses this email address, the spam trapping techniques detects it. Next, outbound spam protection. So once an email message leaves the network, the outbound spam protection tech inspects that email is disconnected. So inspects the email traffic. So any recognized spam email messages are blocked, and the source of the spam email traffic is disconnected. So due to spam, the spam recipients are impacted primarily. This technique can trace the spam sources, and the system users can correct them by vanishing viruses from the infected machines on their networks. Next is cost-based system. So spamming is eased with the fact of composing email messages in large volumes. So since composing an email message is very inexpensive, some individuals suggested that the email senders need to pay some cost for composing an email message. So composing bulk email messages will be very expensive for the spammers. Many of known anti-spam lawyers, advocates, are bringing in lawsuits against email spammers and are trying to make spam less beneficial. Next, SMTP proxy. So SMTP proxy will tackle the spam in actual time, in real time. So by collaborating with the sender's authorities, by giving feedback to these genuine users in real time, and by evicting necessity for quarantine as well. Next, Torpit. Torpit is an email server. I mean, it's a software that deliberately reacts very slowly to the email provider's commands. So, using Torpid, the legitimate email messages are accepted in a regular way, but recognized spam emails are like considered open mail relays or processed slowly. So, the website slows down its operation where the spammers have forcefully driven email messages into the email servers, and in the process some of the genuine email systems also fail to deal precisely with this with the significant delays. Next is channel emails. So this technique is the latest proposition for composing an email message, which dispenses the anti-spam methods by injecting validation when an initial email message is composed by the new recipient. So this technique possibly uses a bounce message mechanism where backscatter doesn't take place. Next, honeypots. So this technique designs a replica of mail transfer agent or proxy TCP or IP server, so that generate the impression of being an open proxy mail relay. Spammers spot this kind of host after in generally spammers post this kind of host after probing systems for proxies or open mail relays. So they start trying to compose the email messages through them and then eventually pass on the information regarding the origin of the spam that they are composing to the host, and that handles this this honeypot technique. So this approach blocks the email sending attempts by the spammers and hands over them to DNSBL, which is block all list. Also analyze the spammers identification for blocking them by storing their information into the into the database. Next, strict enforcement of RFC standards, which is request for comments. So in general, most yeah, in general, most of the spammers use faulty softwares which are not able to follow the standards because they do not gain full access to the computer system, but they are being utilized to spam email messages. Email administrators can minimize the spam remarkably by tightening the limits on the variance from RFC standards that are accepted by mail transfer agents. So this technique has a change of has a chance of blocking email messages from designated email servers. So the first one would be greeting delay. Before sending any email messages, the sending email server must wait until it receives the simple mail transfer protocol, which is SMTP greeting banner. So the receiving email servers can put a hold intentionally until it detects any spam and can reject the sending servers that do not wish to wait. So, and next, temporary rejection. So the SMTP protocol permits the rejection of the incoming email message temporarily, and then gray listing technique is developed on this fact. So the gray listing technique rejects the email message temporarily that are sent from the non-recognized senders or like email servers based on the standard syntax errors. Next, hello or HELO or EHLO commands verification. So SMTP server might validate the domain name in the extended hello command in order to match the IP address of that email providers. So, but if validation fails, the SMTP server shouldn't stop accepting the email message based on this criterion. So the software system can be designed to abort the association with the host that produce an incorrect hello. So for instance, HELO is an IP address that is not enclosed by the square braces, or like is not a fully qualified domain name. So next, invalid pipelining. So many simple transfer, many SMTP commands are permitted to be positioned in a single network packet, so which are pipeline. For instance, once an email message is composed with a CC header in it, then the SMTP RCPT to determines recipients of the email message. So these commands are positioned in one network packet rather than positioning individually. So at specific junctures, this SMTP protocol verifies the errors and organizes everything. Next, no listing. So for any domain, the email servers are defined in an essentialized list through mail exchanger records. So here in this process, the no listing technique adds a mail exchanger record that aims the lowest preferred server as the foremost. So where the primary email contact will be failed to deliver. Next, quit command detection. So it's QUIT command detection. So using the QUIT command, the SMTP connection needs to be closed. So once the spam is sent, most of the spammers do not tend to close the connection correctly as it is time taking. So several MTS, mail transfer agents, can detect improperly closed connections and can evaluate how trustable the sender is based on that. Next, machine learning based systems. The first one is this machine learning. There are many machine learning based techniques, and these are utilized to detect and filter many spam email messages. So these detection techniques train their email networks with probability strategies and validates the recurrence of words that are identical in the spam email messages with the incoming genuine email messages. So some of the machine learning based techniques are Bayesian filters, support vector machines, decision trees, and artificial neural network algorithms. There are many more, but yeah, I covered most of them. So first one, Bayesian filters. So this filtering technique is one of the modern types of machine learning based filtering. In order to vary the email messages between the spam and ham, this technique utilizes the loss of numerical probability. So initially, by manually indicating each email message as ham or spam, this process must be trained by end clients so that the Bayesian filtering technique can operate significantly to block the spam email messages. So thereafter, this filtering technique operates with the phrases that are identified in both ham and spam email messages by marking them to their respective list. So that's how Bayesian filters works. And next, coming to support vector machine. So this SVM is a machine learning based system that operates efficiently in blocking spam email messages. So this technique is a supervised learning model which can validate the content of an email message with the suitable patterns and can classify it as spam or ham. This filtering technique should be trained at the beginning, so where they use email corpus data, and this is of a sparse data format which gives high accuracy values. So SVM is one of the proven successful classification techniques with its accuracy. Next, decision trees. So this technique fully functions with the feature selection and variable analysis in the training, where they use email corpus data. So the functioning of this technique doesn't rely on the connections among parameters. A decision tree has the ability to provide proper solutions to the issues. It can open all the conceivable alternatives and directs each alternative to its end in a single frame where it can be assessed directly among the various branches of the tree. So if there isn't proper pruning, then it will be difficult to operate the tree growth, and which is a disadvantage of this technique. Next, clustering technique. This technique is a unsupervised learning model that is applied to spam email database. A bunch of patterns are classified into associated classes, and this approach can classify the objects or case studies into relatively equivalent assortments known as clusters. And certain clustering algorithms can classify the spam email detection techniques into spam or ham clusters. So this technique operates effectively when compared to few semi-supervised techniques. So clustering techniques consist of two different types, and they are like k nearest neighbors, which is KNN clustering, which we see in most of the proven researchers, and also density based clustering as well. So these two clustering techniques are used to classify the spam email messages and are exploited in solving the issues as well. Next, neural networks. This technique isn't typically used for detecting spam email messages, but as this can be anticipated easily. So neural networks are interrelated sets of simple processing components that convey each other with suitably weighted associations. So every component receives inputs from the adjacent components and from a few other sources as well, and the output is computed and conveyed to other adjacent components. So also the neural network has two kinds of training, and they are supervised as well as unsupervised. Next, automated techniques by email senders. So confirmed opt-in for mailing list. The spammers can try to subscribe to other email user addresses to the mailing catalog in order to annoy or like can make the appearance of the user or organizations to be spam. So, excuse me. In order to avoid this kind of spam, many mailing catalog encourage confirmed opt-in technique to be implemented by default. So once an email address is submitted for subscription to the mailing catalog, this technique sends a notification to the submitted addresses, and the confirmation notification sent by this technique has no spam content in it. If a recipient acknowledges the confirmation notification, then the submitted email address is added to the mailing catalog. And next, spam filtering. So recently, email providers have been performing the same kind of spam detection validations on incoming email messages that are composed by their customers and correspondents when compared to incoming email messages that are composed by other users. So this process secures the reputation of the email provider, as it can be damaged if a system is infected with the spam viruses. So this process is known as spam filtering. And next, port 25 blocking. So the routers and firewalls can be designed in such a way that the acceptance of SMTP traffic, I mean, this is TCP port 25, so can be stopped from the systems that are not required to compose any email messages or not required to run MTS on the network servers. So based upon the request made by the users, if ISPs don't turn off the blocking mechanism, then it can be problematic, as these ISPs block the users. So still, from these systems and email messages can be composed to the configured recipients through TCP port 25, and the other recipients can receive through email submissions, ports 587. Next, strong acceptable use policy and terms of services. These are like agreements. So almost all of the email providers and ISPs own either a terms of service or acceptable use policy agreement. So this could deflate the spammers from utilizing their computer systems. For for violating the terms and conditions, the spammers are terminated from the servers and also from the services from the provider services as well. Next, background checks on new users and customers. So most of the spammers' email accounts are deactivated regularly as they breach the email policies. So these spammers will be registering new accounts all the time. Like once their old account is deactivated, then they always create the new one. So once an ISP is considered as a source of spam, then the email clients implement these captchas, which we see which we see frequently nowadays. So in order to validate the new accounts, whether they are being registered like by the individuals or by the automated spam bots. So before new customer registers the account, the respective credit cards are validated by verifying the spammers list, and the required background checks are performed. Next, port 25 interception. So this is like, in order to intercept SMTP traffic, the network address translation is used and is administered to the email servers, so which imposes egress spam filtering here. This process can be the reason behind email privacy issues, but if the usage of an email submission like port 587 is not taking place, then the usage of SMTP authentication, or like STA or TTLS, which is like start transport layer security command given between the server and the email program, will be impossible. Next is limit email backscatter. So once the recipient email server accepts the email message and later identifies it as spam, or it is composed to the unknown recipient, so it sends a bounce message to the original sender. The bounce message will be a backscatter spam if the information of the sender on the composed email message is forged from the innocent user. So due to this, the rejection of the composed email messages takes place at the SMTP connection stage using error syntaxes, where the sending email servers are still being connected. So in this scenario, the issue will be reported to the original sender by the sending email servers. Next, from field control. So most of the spammers and malware compose a spam email message using a forged from email address. So in order to ensure that the senders are using their original from email address in an outgoing email message, the controls are implemented on the SMTP email servers in a database like that is subjected to the email clients, where every individual has a record with one email address. So the SMTP email server verifies the from email address of an outgoing email message with the user's belonging email address that is provided for the SMTP authentication purposes. So if the SMTP email server detects the from email address of an outgoing email message as a forged email address, then it will send an error notification to that email user. Next is spam report feedback loops. So ISPs, like internet service providers, can obtain the knowledge of the spam issues by observing the reports of the spam before the spammers destroy their reputation. So, and they make their email servers blacklisted. So these reports can be monitored from SpamCop, which is like spam email reporting service. So this is a network abuse. They can also monitor from network abuse clearinghouse, also from like feedback loops, domain abuse at the mailbox, and there are many other techniques that they can be monitored from. And rate limiting. So here there are few computer systems that start composing email messages in large volumes, so which are known as virus affected computers. Limiting the rate of email messages by considering what is required in general for the computer systems can slow down the large volumes of spam. before performing manual inspection. So still, the genuine email message can be composed. Next, law enforcement officials and researchers. So suitable legislation and their implementations can impact spamming remarkably. Certain words or text is provided by the legislation to the email senders in order to include them in their email messages, where the bulk genuine email messages can be identified easily. Also, like progressively, these spam detection techniques have promoted the association between the researchers, analysts, law enforcement officials, internet service providers, and many other financial service organizations in the form of tracing spam emails. So, also monitoring spam, phishing, identity theft, and collecting evidence from the issues occurred. So here in my research, so I got like few of the study questions. I'll walk through. I got like six main questions, so main study questions. So I'll walk through each question one by one. So the first question is, what are the existing email spam detection techniques developed? There are various detection techniques listed, like based on reputation, based on words, I mean, based on the textual content, so based on multimedia content, based on the responsibilities of email users, administrators, senders, and law enforcement details. So the analysis is evaluated based on how far these techniques are detecting the email spam messages. And second question is, how severe is the problem of email spamming? Globally, most email users would face email spamming problems. So, the severity of the problem is huge. Due to spam, the belief in the email users in the electronic environment is decreasing. So, the increasing volume of spam making email users less likely to use the email services. So, a national survey indicates that spam is degrading the integrity of an email and online experiences as well. So, the following are the key stats from the national survey that was conducted in 2003 by Fallows. So, like 25% of the email users lowered their email usage due to the increased volume of spam, and 60% of these users say that the impact is huge. And the trust of an email has been reduced due to spam in 52% of email users. So, due to spam, 70% of email users experience being annoyed online, and the incoming email can be blocked by filtering techniques, which is a worrying sign on 30% of email users. So, I mean, due to filtering techniques, only 23% of the email users are worried that their emails to others might be blocked, and which is a good. I mean, only 23%. That's not bad, but still, 23% is a large large volume, I feel. So over 25% of email users are worried about the flow of spam which can't be stopped, and 80% of the email users are worried about misleading and fraudulent spam contents as well. So, and I see this 76% of email users are worried by disrespectful and vulgar spam content. And coming to third question, how accurately are the existing email spam detection techniques working? Presently, spam emails increase depending on various criteria such as stock advices, advertisements, marketing, chain letters, and so on. So, using different algorithms and concepts, there are various filtering techniques developed to restrict spam emails. But according to the national survey, the impacted percentage of email users is high, which suggests that the existing email spam detection techniques aren't adequate. My fourth question is the problem resolved? As of now, the national survey suggests that a lot of email users are facing problems due to spam. Though there are various filtering and detection techniques developed, there is still a lot of improvement required to resolve the problem completely. Of course, the problem cannot be completed uh, 100%, but at least can be developed until it meets certain criteria where 70 to 80% of spam is being prevented. It should be good. My fifth question is it getting better or worse? So spam is a this is a persistent issue. So, and the problem is getting worse. Here are like few statistics which could describe the impact of spam emails. The impact of fraud emails is increasing year by year, which suggests that the problem is getting worse. Phishing attacks on maliciously registered domains are increasing overall, so which affects the trust of email users. So in 2016, the attacks and domains used for phishing and maliciously registered domains were like in high volume. So when compared to 2012, so this could describe that the spam email problem is getting worse. Due to the impact of phishing, there is a high number of compromised accounts in 2018. The loss of data and malware infections have been increasing year by year as well. And coming to my sixth question, are the current techniques being able to address the problem? So most of the current detection techniques are being able to address the problem, but not accurately. So these are, there are false positives that need to be addressed, and some of the algorithms are not accurately detecting the spam email messages as well. So here is a graph that I took from the surveys. This graph indicates the impact of email fraud, uh, phishing attacks and domains used, and phishing impacts experience. So here this graph is from 2012 to 2016, the differentiation, the increase of spam, also from 2016 to 2018, like how many compromised accounts have been there, how many malware infections have took place, and the loss of data for, for based on the spam emails. Coming to next recommendations. So spam is a never-ending issue as spammers produce a variety of scams in order to exploit, and no detection techniques has a proper solution to prevent it, because every day scammers they come up with different ideas. So every new idea has to be prevented by every new detection technique. So this is a persistent issue, and email users need to be more responsible from their end by creating genuine passwords. The passwords that has numbers, letters, and some sign, and that has all different types of characters in it. So, and also using disposable email addresses whenever required, reporting spam and not responding to spam email messages. So all the email spam detection techniques need to advance technologically and develop mechanisms according to the challenges that they encounter while detecting. And it is highly recommended to use unique and multi-layer spam filtering techniques. So all the email providers should follow the standards and policies, and any user violating the email rule should be terminated. The email user should report all false positives, rejecting ham email messages and some false negatives, like not rejecting spam email messages to their email providers. This has to be taken seriously by by identifying some false positives. So, and there is a scope to work more on the downsides of the techniques where it can improve the accuracy in detecting spam email messages. So, next conclusion. So, some new spam detection techniques are being developed, and none of filtering techniques have the right solutions, as each of them has few downsides where the spammers can benefit. So one of the possible ways to prevent spam is to use unique and multi-layer filtering. Most of the spammers modify the email messages where they can be escaped from detection, so by one sort of filtering technique, but can be detected if you if it's difficult to avoid multi-layering filtering techniques. If one phrase or word cannot be detected by one detection technique, it can be detected using other detection techniques. So it's always good idea to use unique and multi-layer filterings. And in addition, like there are few outdated techniques that spammers exploit in all the possible ways. So these email spam detection techniques have been categorized according to the responsibilities of users, administrators, senders, and law enforcement officials. And all individuals have a role in preventing spam. It's not only this email providers, it's the end user has to play a huge role in preventing spam. So the problem is getting worse as the impact of spam is huge and many domains are being registered maliciously. Future work. So there is always a possibility to learn and improve detecting algorithms, and we can always reduce spam in different ways. The texture of spam is very effective, and the spammers reactivity accordingly is giving way to study more about the existing email spam detection techniques. And as mentioned, so spam is never ending issue, and there are few fascinating challenges that a spam detection technique could encounter. So one is controlling the drift in the ideas, as the change over a period is, I mean, they change over a period in unexpected ways and are difficult to foresee them. So the others are like eliminating false positives, emerging spam threats, and prioritizing email messages, and always good to report spam if you find one. And my references. More references as well. Thank you.